To write a book with your spouse is dangerous. We nearly killed each other. If two people are writing it, for the same incident can be remembered differently. There is great profoundness and great sophistication in the ordinary lives of people if captured right. He was a professor of physics in Presidency College. He used to be a Naxal in the 60s. Being foolish is also a crucial part of being open. 10 reasons not to do, but you still do it because you are inspired.
What happens when you quit a stable job, board a local bus with a backpack, and decide to rediscover India, one conversation at a time? Our guest today did exactly that. From the hilarious misadventures of the Heat and Dust project to the nostalgia of friends from college, the wit of the vague woman's handbook, and even a graphic biography of Indira Gandhi. She has built a career finding extraordinary stories in ordinary lives. Joining us today, author, traveler, storyteller Devapriya Roy, assistant professor with Ashoka University. Welcome to a new episode of Books and Banter, a Dialogus Digital original series. Welcome to the show, Devapriya.
Thank you, Portia. Thank you for having me.
You've written fiction, travel writing, graphic history, and edited anthologies. Do you consciously choose from the form based on the story, or does the story choose its own form?
I think you're right that the story chooses its own form. It's always that. And so for the Heat and Dust project, for example, we began with the idea, and it's a book that Saurav and I co-wrote together. To write a book with your spouse is dangerous. We nearly killed each other. That we survived it probably makes us, better parents. So
I like the way you put it.
So the form of the book, so we began with the idea, and the idea was very compelling and dramatic, that we would leave everything, which we did, leave our jobs, move our stuff back home to Calcutta, and then begin.
I believe you also had a daily budget.
We had a daily budget of 500 rupees a day for bed and board. Okay, so we stayed in, what we always say, if you remember Jab We Met, and if you remember Hotel Decent and the Ghante ke hisab se rooms, we kind of stayed in either hotels like that, or we stayed in backpacker hubs. In
those hostel kinds.
At that time.
In today's parlance.
In today's parlance, it's
Yes.
hostel. At that time, it was, people's homes turned into little...
Like homestays.
Little homestays or little hotels in pilgrim places. So they were for pilgrims and for backpackers. So that made for a very interesting combination. So the budget was key, and the idea that we would travel at a hurtling pace through the country, all of that. So the journey itself was very, it was tireless and it was dramatic, and we learnt a lot, we were absorbing a lot. But in the writing of the book, that is where a different kind of craft was required to hit the right notes. It had to be fun as well as deep. We were saying that, this is a book that we are writing about India, the India that we saw. And it was written by two people. So both the voices had to be there, right?
Yeah.
So that's why finding how we would write the book after we had traveled and we had copious notes and photographs and differing memories. And sometimes, as it happens with books of this sort, if two people are writing it, for the same incident can be remembered differently.
That is the
both.
Perspective, that kind of is challenging in any kind of co-authored
That's
piece.
right.
Yeah.
And so what we did is we actually wrote the book. So we decided that we would follow a chronological arc, and so D and S would each carry the story forward for a little bit, and mostly D because I'm more chatty, and then that once we started, so we tried many different formats. We tried to write as we, and that doesn't work at all.
That doesn't work.
So we've got one little segment where we are speaking sort of on behalf of our generation, as it were. That's written in the we voice, but otherwise, so it's while writing it that we we had to work the hardest to find that when it started to,
Where you have to merge your voices.
where each of our voices and the depth of the story, but
Is not diluted by the other.
Yeah, and by also, but it also has to be page turning. It also has to be hooky and fun.
Sure.
And because basically you're promising the reader that come along with us. So let's see if it can be done, and who are the people we'll meet. And we went into their homes, and we were always open to invitations. So all the, so when you accept an invitation to a stranger's house, you're always like, okay, but is it going to be safe? So all of that. So the book has to capture the whole of it.
Yeah.
Right? The
Holistic
yeah.
kind of experience. So when you started the journey, did you know that you're going to convert this into a book?
Yes.
Okay.
So we had written our first books. We had written our first books. They were not yet out. They were with our editor. We pitched it as a book idea.
Right.
And so we did have a modest book contract when we began traveling. And so we knew it was going to be a book, and that was an added bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Right? That you would have to have a book at the end of it, because as you said very rightly, that the story chooses the form.
Yeah.
And here we were taking, it was a risk, because we were saying, okay, we're going to live the story and see what form it takes.
It stays in your head that you're not just going to experience this, you have to put it down, you have to pen it.
Yes, so that means that you're kind of, cognitively processing it even while you're living it.
Right.
But writers do that. Writers are vultures upon their own selves,
Your books, like I mentioned at the introduction, often, celebrate the ordinary rather than the spectacular. What draws you to everyday lives and seemingly small moments?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I like it very much. I think I turned to the novel even as a young person. I read all the time. Then I studied literature, which was just an excuse to read more. I think there is always, there are two ways of approaching the story, and one is the big stories, the macro, the big ideas. So the great Indian novel, therefore, one would imagine, would talk about the great Indian concerns. So caste, religion, nationhood, right? Modernity versus tradition, or corruption. So these are all big Indian ideas. I am more interested in witnessing how that transforms the mundane, but it's actually not the mundane. The lived reality of our everyday lives encompasses everything, the whole world. So not just a national perspective, but a
Domestic.
deeply felt domestic moment. So to me, there is great profoundness and great sophistication in the ordinary lives of people if captured right.
Right. So humor runs through almost everything you have written, and would you say that humor is your way of making difficult truths easier to all?
Oh yes. So it's quite funny, and just now I was telling you about how the great Indian novel was going to be about these big ideas, and any young writer worth their salt is supposed to examine these big ideas. And of course, as a ridiculous young person, when I thought I'm going to be a writer, I wanted to write the great Indian novel about big issues. And I had a very wise mentor. He was a professor of physics, a radical in his youth. His name was Dipanjan Rai Chaudhary. He was a professor of physics in Presidency College. He used to be a Naxal in the 60s, one of the sort of young revolutionary men who then spent time in prison, then went back, became an academic, became a professor, was a extremely well-read man.
Right.
He has been written about by V.S. Naipaul in
Oh,
India,
okay.
A Million Mutinies Now. Beautifully, actually. That's a perfect portrait of him and his wife, Aruti. And so the two of them, I met DRC when I was a student at Presidency College. I was studying English. I had no business to know the physics head of the department, but Presidency was like that in those days. And it was perfectly normal for him to also be one of my mentors. He told me that, it, write the novel later. When you have had a bit more experience, when you've, worked on your books for longer, because you'll regret it if you try and write it now. Write something close to your life. And I took his advice. I did that. And I wrote, instead of a grand tragic novel, I wrote a little comic novel, which is The Vague Woman's Handbook, and which was quite autobiographical, as first novels often are. And as you said, I used humor to process life, right?
Our daily mundane
Yes,
things.
it was
and
about two women, the friendship between two women who are separated by 3 decades. And the older one is terrible at finances. She doesn't know how credit card works, so she's used credit cards all over. And now she's in her mid-50s. She is a senior government officer, but she has all these secret credit card debts. And the younger one is Mil Chatterjee, who's kind of based on me, who has on a lark married her college sweetheart, barely out of college, and is now trying to make sense of life. So, life and literature, and has her first job, which is at the Academy of Letters.
Wow.
Which is like a thinly veiled Sahitya Academy. So, yeah, and I had fun writing it, and I was very lucky that an editor, a fabulous editor, V.K. Kartika, who's remained my editor and publisher since.
Throughout.
She agreed to publish it. So that became the first book. And after that I wrote a serialized novel. I mean, I wrote a novel in the middle. Yeah, but I'm sure you have some other questions.
So the other book, Friends from College, nostalgia becomes another important character.
Yeah.
Why do college friendships continue to shape us long after we've graduated? What would you say that as an author?
College friendships, right? Because I think college is, and it's quite interesting because now I'm speaking also as someone who teaches college students, right? 18-year-olds. And I see them from a completely different perspective. But I think 18, 19, 20, these are years when we are still open to being reshaped and remolded. And I think that's sort of the last stage. Or maybe that's too, I don't know, psychologists will know this.
I wanted to just clarify that, most of us would have an idea that this is an age period where we do, get shaped and formed in a particular way. But would you also say that this is an age group where we are open to inspirations?
Yes, we're still foolish. And I think being foolish is also a crucial part of being open, right?
I think it's an important phase in life to stay foolish.
To stay foolish, because then that makes you do things that, that there would be 10 reasons not to do. But you still do it because you are inspired. And I think that's why college friendships are important. College romances are also important, and Friends from College. And it's interesting that Friends from College actually is not about our generation, it's about slightly older people. So who then reunite in Calcutta many years later. And why that generation is important is because, to me, sociologically, they seem to me to be a very interesting generation, because they were born in socialist India and they came of age post-liberalization in such a way that they became the first generation who started getting these 6-figure salaries. And 6-figure salaries at a time used to be reported in the national dailies, So it's about that. It's about that generation. And then they are, as you said, it's a lot about nostalgia. So they are 20 years in re-evaluating life and going back. And it was actually serialized. There's also a reason why it had to be written with a light touch, because it was serialized in the Telegraph on Sundays. So it was like Sunday morning reading with, I don't know, Luchi and Aluddam. So
a lot of nostalgia and memory and reality. I think a culmination of that comes out in this book. How did you come up with something like this?
I think as a literature student, I've read a lot of serialized fiction. In fact, novels were serialized. Whether Charles Dickens, whether Tagore, they serialized the novels, right? So what is that process like? when you're writing an entire novel from start to finish and nobody sees it, it's a different process. You can change a lot of things later in the day. You can rewrite it. There are novelists who will rewrite the entire thing from a different character's perspective or something like that. But when you're serializing it, you're committing to a path, you're setting it out in public, right? So how do you craft an entire world in the view of the audience, right? So you have to work, so it imposes a certain constraint. You cannot go back and change somebody and say, okay, no, this guy is turning out to be very villainous, but if you've already made him seem a particular way, you can't change that. You'll have to let it grow. And so I had great fun doing it. I actually wrote it week by week.
Maneuvering characters.
Which is characters maneuver you. You don't get to maneuver characters.
I think, that is, especially in fiction, for sure.
Yes, and so, when people would write to me, I used to get a lot of letters from readers, for friends from college, because they were also following the novel alongside me. And they would say, so some people would say, listen, you can't possibly give them a happy ending because that's not realistic. And equally a large number of them would tell me, you have to give them a happy ending because, life may not give it, but fiction must. And
Hope.
I would tell them honestly that I don't know. I am going to find out as I write. So it was literally week by week that the story took shape.
Wow.
And
how long did you take to?
52 weeks. It was.
That's pretty much a year.
52 weeks. I think it ran for a year. And my poor editor friend, he became a great friend doing this. Obijita, he was driven mad by, because you see, I had to turn in the chapter for the illustrator to then do his illustration, and my chapter, my characters were controlling me, and they would not be still enough for me to capture them. So, but it was a great experience.
I'm sure it sounds exciting. I was just thinking, back in our school days, we used to have something called the library period. And in that period, you could see the different characteristics of each of the class people. I mean, I didn't realize it back then. I realize it now, as soon as we entered, there's one group that would go to the magazine section, one group that would go to the fiction section, and one would go to the non-fiction section.
Right.
I think that says a lot of how some people of those groups, where they are today in life.
Portia, where did you go?
I think I went more in the non-fiction section.
Yes, no wonder you're friends with Mr. Jha. He would also, so when we go to a bookstore, he will invariably,
I am more of a reference book person than a fiction book. So, I think that's why I am in research today.
Yeah.
But I never realized back then that, things can lead you like this. Readings can lead you where they are today.
I would invariably go to the novel section, fiction. And I do know that, my best friend used to always go for magazines. And at 13, this is India a long time ago, Femina was the most
popular. But difficult to get a hold of it.
We didn't get a hold of it at home, but in school it was there. I think the teachers liked it. So Femina and Women's Era.
Yes.
So my friend used to resolutely go to the magazines,
I used to even think back then that, when is the time to read fiction? And I think that is where my life is even today. When is the time to read fiction?
And my approach to this is just the opposite. It's like everything is an interruption of my reading fiction.
Yeah.
Life is an interruption
of fiction.
Of my,
I think that's what you were trying to say earlier, that to get two perspectives on the same subject, similar experience, but when you pen it, it's very different. Coming back to the Heat and Dust project, travel writing has long shaped, how nations are imagined and understood. So in the Heat and Dust project, you have portrayed India through everyday encounters rather than the iconic monuments or grand historical narratives. Do you see your work as contributing to an alternative imagination of India, one that privileges lived experiences over official narratives?
Absolutely, and I think this is a great question, because Saurav and I both have dealt with this question in different through our different perspectives. He as an economist, And I mean, he's always been one for Swadeshi. So even narratives, a Swadeshi narrative of Desh. For me, because I also spent a lot of time reading the other travelogues that were there. You know, one of the jokes that is there in the book, and we've tried to verbalize it. We've actually tried to explain this problem that when you write something about India in English, you are placing that in a tradition of a lot of writing about India in English, and so everything can be political, it can be powerful. So there's a bit where, and this is literally, there's a chapter where I go over it this way. Even when you talk about the terrible inequalities that exist, how you write it as an Indian writing to other Indians would be different from the way you write it if you're writing it as an outsider, explaining India to another part of the world, right? So one of the things that we make a joke of is that, you know, I say I got down from the bus and stepped into cow dung. And then after I wrote that sentence, I went back and I said, no, I think I should change this, because, you know, cow dung has clogged a lot of writing about India. So that kashmakash has always been there. You think about it very deeply. You think about the use of language deeply. It's different when you write something in an Indian language, because in a sense, you're by the fact that, and English is also an Indian language, but when you're not contending with a lot of competing narratives,
Right.
In the same way.
No, I understand. I mean, there are different connotations to the same word, and each language or even each region can perceive it in a different way. I think that's what you're saying, that even if they're not contending,
Yeah, that it's very important, and we were conscious of it, and we played around with the idea, and so we said that, you know, Heat and Dust Project is a book written in Indian, and so even if you see the cover, it says The Broke Couple's Guide to Bharat, right? So we tried to play around with the fact that we were writing in an Indian English, and of course great writers have already done it, and the English that in any case we use in India is Indian English, and Indian English is an Indian language. But a book like this does go into a tradition of travelogues about India, going right back to the times when India has been seen by outsiders, and so that has a certain perspective. This was insiders writing about some of the same things. And
what would you think the contemporary Indian writers understand about India that often outsiders miss?
I think there is a sort of excess about every moment lived in India that, you know, it's, for example, just walking down a street, it's so chaotic that for an outsider, it becomes an overwhelming reality. And that chaos is at many different levels, right? So just to use it as a metaphor, that, you know, you're walking down a typical Indian street, there are so many things happening. It's so chaotic. You're weaving through the cars, and crossing, a lot of the kind of orderliness is completely suspended, and many different kinds of lives are happening at the same time. This can be quite overwhelming. So the India-ness of India is so vivid that to an outsider it may overwhelm the entire story. That becomes the story sometimes. Whereas I think when you live here, when you've lived here all along, when this is your reality, then within that you are able to hear your inner life, and and a writer's job is to capture the inner life. And so in the middle of all the chaos, if you're that kind of a writer, your ear has to be tuned to that inner life. So sometimes this becomes a difference in perspective, that the decibel level of the chaos can sometimes interfere with.
Suppose you had to Would it be very difficult for you to write about something in a society outside India? Has your how much has your upbringing shaped that your chosen themes are very close to Indian society? You may have traveled abroad, you have not lived in abroad. So, do you think has it ever struck you that I need to bring an international angle to my story?
This is a very interesting question, and writers have kind of been arguing about it for a long time. And I remember that I think it was Hari Kunzru who once said many years ago that a writer should be free to write about any place and any people, right? There's also the thing about what is Indian literature. Is it so? For example, Vikram Seth, one of his greatest novels is called Unequal Music, and it is set in England, and some of it is traveling in the continent, and it's entirely about the world of Western classical music.
Right.
There are no Indian characters in it, but that is also an Indian novel, right? So I think the imagination is free, and writers are theoretically or hypothetically free to write about or to set their stories anywhere they want, including in lands of fantasy, right, which are only in their imagination. But at the same time, there's also the question, the problem of appropriation.
Right.
So if there's a very unequal power imbalance between the people you're writing about and the writer's own perspective, then it becomes a more complicated question, right? So I think that is where this becomes a thorny problem. As for me, yeah, I don't know. Now, so currently I have been working with, my current projects are quite different. I'm translating Tagore's Gora, and Tagore's Gora has been translated before, so I'm retranslating it because sometimes you need new translations to infuse a kind of new life into the text.
You have to bring in contemporary thinking. I'm sure you're using a different lens which has not been used before.
And it's a very it's a remarkable novel because it captures an India that even now, so it's speaking to India today, I think in a extremely urgent way. And I think while trying to translate it, render it into English, I've examined this question in a different way because it's set in Calcutta in the early 1880s. So it's a very different time.
Very different time.
Bringing that alive using,
That was pretty much the decade when the Congress was formed. So it was Surendranath Banerjee and Abhinavabhadranath Thakur, and all those people were there in Calcutta. So
it was the Bengal Renaissance and the Brahmo Samaj. The Brahmo Samaj was one of the great. It was sort of, and the novel is about.
It had a lot of impact on literary works thereafter.
On literature and on society, and all the sort of the debates between the liberals and the conservatives. It seems so alive even in today's context, right? The other thing that I wanted to say, when you were earlier on asking me about the ordinary and in the extraordinary, the one book where I've actually written about Indira Gandhi, there's a book called Indira. This is a biography, a young adult biography of Mrs. Gandhi, and this is written with the artist Priya Kurian. It's actually her art. This was imagined to be a sort of a biography for young adults. And the idea to me to bring her alive to young people now was again to frame it in the ordinary. So there's a framing story. There's Mrs. Gandhi's biography, but there's also the story of a young girl called Indira Thapa who lives in a working class colony in Delhi and studies in a government school. And she's given a project in school to ask why is her name. All the children have to go and ask their parents, and she has a single mother, and the thing is that she has to go and ask her parents, why was I named Indira? And so all the children have to
explain.
It's a project about their names. So it sends her into a story of, okay, why was I named Indira? And the story over there, right? So I really do think that to embed anything in the world of the ordinary and the small is also a resistive act in its own way.
Yeah. I think it's beautifully put because you're actually bringing in like a historical research within an autobiography itself and giving it another shape to a story, which is wonderful. So, coming to a little bit fun part of this interview, it's called the rapid fire round, and I'm going to quickly ask you
Oh
some
my God.
questions on your preferences as an author, especially because you travel a lot, you write, so you will have some idea. Mountain or beaches?
Oh, this is so hard. It's, I'm old now, so probably beaches.
Train or bus?
Bus.
Window seat or aisle?
Window.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Notebook or phone notes?
Notebook, always.
Hostel or heritage hotel?
Oh, well, neither. Like a little bed and breakfast.
Bookshop or museum?
Bookshop.
I
Always bookshop. Anywhere bookshop.
I like that, even though your writings have had cross genres and all of it, you've somehow brought in the concept of imagining India in whatever works you've done. So, why don't you tell us something about your future projects other than, what you've mentioned?
I actually have several books in different stages of completion. So the Gora translation.
Yeah, you
is
mentioned
in
that.
Edits.
What
and
else?
It's a mammoth book, 760 pages. So
Hmm.
it's a huge. So that kind of sucked up a couple of years of my life. So I was hanging out with So let's say we've got a picture of Rabindranath Tagore in our study, and it was handed down. My father had it framed for me. So it's like I would look at him and say, this is this is all I'm doing. I'm hanging out with you, basically. I
Yeah.
would look at Tagore and say. But so that's one. Other than that, I'm writing an academic book. It's on academic writing, which is a whole other
Something new
genre.
for you altogether.
Well,
as an
I mean, I
author.
teach writing to young scholars. So I've been thinking about how do you teach writing effectively. So that's what I do for a living now, and I love teaching. I love my students. I learn a lot from them. So it's through that classroom that actually this book has come out. It's co-written with my colleague and friend Aditi Sriram, who's also a writer, and the two of us, we have experimented with teaching writing for many years. And for her, she's also taught she's from the US, so she's also taught in US colleges. So writing, how do you teach writing? So this is a book that hopefully will be out next year too. And I'm writing a book. So my PhD was actually on Bharata's Natya Shastra,
Okay.
and that's a great, grand Indian text, and that is what it articulates the rasa theory. So about the concept of the 9 rasas, right? Navras, and actually
long back in
back.
school.
Yeah, so the Navrasas, actually, the 9th rasa was an addition by Abhinav Gupta, who was a great
Okay.
Indian thinker and a commentator on Bharata's Natya Shastra. Bharata actually gave 8 rasas, and that also shows something vital about the Indian tradition, that nothing was set in stone. You always had the freedom to add to it, to change it.
Yeah.
Later on, it became more set in
More
stone and it
rigid,
became a problem.
yeah.
So we need to go back and keep talking about that quality, which is what keeps a tradition vital.
Yeah, you modify as per the time, but you
Yes.
don't replace history.
You modify as per the time, and that's the brilliant thing about the Natya Shastra, because it's a manual for dramaturges, for
Yeah.
actors, for the production people, right? So often there are like lots of rules, very interesting ones, and then at the end it'll say, and the director will adapt, will modify according to time and place. So time and place, and what that does is when you're given a whole set of rules and then you say, but listen, all of this can be changed. I think that's amazing, and that's one of the things that drew me to the Natya Shastra. So anyway, the idea of the rasa theory was posited in the Natya Shastra as one of the most one of the ways in which it explained how aesthetics works. Why are we moved by a work of art? Why when we watch a play or when we watch a film, for example, we find ourselves crying? even though we know that the actors are actually not the people they are portraying. But in that moment, we've forgotten that. Right?
Yeah.
We all shed real tears over imaginary stories.
situations, yeah.
So why do we do that? So the rasa theory explains this, and I worked on that for my PhD.
It
so
sounds like a really difficult thesis.
well, it was well, I think all PhD theses are difficult. But so now, you know, so this is a book that actually, this is a series of books that actually Ashoka University is publishing. These are all translations.
Okay.
Each of them talks about a great Indian idea. And so this has, you know, 3 chapters of the Natya Shastra. It's a mammoth book. It's only got 3 chapters in translation, and it explains the rasa theory. Chapter 6 is the famous chapter on rasas. So that's one of the books. And what else? Yeah, and I'm writing a little book on Anand Bhavan, Allahabad, which I had gone to first, you know, when I was researching Indira.
Okay.
And so that's going to be a small little narrative book. So these,
Wonderful. That is
yeah,
like 3
4.
projects. Yeah, 4 of them lined
In
up for you.
different stages of completion.
That's I think a very comfortable life for an author.
It's it's an insane life. It's not a life at all. It's madness.
You know, if every listener could take away just one lesson from your books, you know, not about travel but about life, what would you hope it would be?
About life. Oh dear Lord. You
From
not
your
put me on the
book,
spot.
since
My
you've
books.
taken such moments of life to describe in your writings.
I think the idea of time. In fiction, we have it a little easy because you can move time around. In life, you actually have to live through it day by day. But I think the one thing that I have learned from my life as a writer, which is that, you know, it comes together sentence by sentence. That is the only way to craft a book and to craft a life. Okay? It's only bit by bit and moment by moment, and you have to do it. And in the doing is the living, right?
Thank you, Dr. Devapriya. You've been very, very kind to share your journey as an author with us, which is what we, you know, aim to do at Books and Banter. And fascinating combination of work that you've done. I'm sure our audience will thoroughly enjoy this.
Thank you for having me. I've been on a bit of a sabbatical, an extended maternity break, but so sometimes I feel that, you know, I'm glad actually to talk about writing as a process, and having spent this time with you, I'm also kind of re-energized. Thank you.
Thank you once again for joining the show.